We begin tonight with this. More chaos out of New York, where the state's Attorney General, Letitia James, just set a dangerous new precedent in order to fill her political campaign promise, which is to go after one organization, the Trump Organization, one man, Donald Trump, one family, the Trump family. The New York Attorney General cooked up a bizarre civil case, got a far-left New York leftist judge to rule in her favor, is now threatening to seize Donald Trump's businesses and properties if he doesn't come up with what is an unprecedented $500 million bond. 30 bond companies, they don't do that kind of business. Now, this is a case straight out of the old Soviet Union. No victims here. The banks that New York claims were defrauded, none of them complained. They all made money. Paid on time with interest. They were eager to do business with Donald Trump again. Now, keep in mind, financial institutions, they have their own fiduciary responsibility to do their own valuations. You don't loan hundreds of millions of dollars for a real estate project or insure hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate unless you do your own due diligence. The Trump Organization even had a written disclaimer given to every bank and every insurance company: do not use the Trump Organization's valuations. That was confirmed by the Deutsche Bank witness that came up in this case. But a left-wing judge arbitrarily decided Mar-a-Lago. This case was all about valuations. He said a mere $18 million, a fraction of the price of empty lots, 2-acre lots selling for $100 and $200 million. This is a 22-acre historic property with 2 clubs on the ocean, on the intercoastal, and it's in pristine condition. It's got 50-some-odd bedrooms. It's got 40-some-odd bathrooms. But you can get a 2-acre empty lot on the ocean now for sale in Palm Beach for $200 million. Does that sound like the right valuation? Sounds like the judge in this case is more guilty than that which Donald Trump was ever accused of. The New York Attorney General is chomping at the bit to seize these properties. One problem, however: the former president, he appears to have the cash to cover the bond on Truth Social. Trump posted, quote, "Through hard work, talent, and luck, I currently have almost $500 million in cash, a substantial amount of which I intended to use for my campaign for president." And speaking of Truth Social, Trump also stands to gain over $3 billion when his social media company goes public, which, by the way, that approval happened today. But let's be clear. This is not justice in America. This is political persecution. And, you know, maybe many on the left and in the media mob, you're celebrating. But remember this: if this can happen to Donald Trump, it can happen to anyone in New York or any other state that doesn't believe in equal justice or application of our laws, and they deem individual A, B, or C a political problem. It is chilling, but it's not just New York. Multiple states and the U.S. federal government have weaponized justice in order to silence their political rivals, all to get Donald Trump, get Trump. In a bombshell new interview with the Daily Mail, well, Trump's acting Secretary of Defense, Chris Miller, he accused the January 6th committee of waging a campaign of intimidation. Quote, "The January 6th committee threatened to make his life hell if he kept claiming that his former boss authorized National Guard deployment before the riot." All right. So Miller claims that members intimidated him, warned that they would repeatedly bring him in for hours of additional testimony if he kept going on TV and defending the former president's actions. Now, the piece is specifically referring to this show. According to Miller, Liz Cheney was running the show, and apparently his claim that Trump was willing to call up the National Guard in the days leading up to January 6th to protect the Capitol, well, that was ruining their predetermined outcome, her narrative. A narrative that was, we now know, full of, well, outright lies. And despite Cheney's dishonest and self-aggrandizing smear campaign, well, the defense secretary, says that Trump, in fact, did ask for sufficient National Guard protection at the Capitol in the days leading up to January 6th. So did the Capitol Police Chief, Sund. So did the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley. So did the DOD Inspector General. In their report, it said, quote, General Milley told us that at the end of the meeting, the president told Mr. Miller that there would be a large number of protesters on January 6th, and Mr. Miller should ensure sufficient National Guard or soldiers would be there to make sure it was a safe event. Remember, in writing, D.C. Mayor Bowser was reported that she declined any National Guard help. But it wasn't just Milley and Miller making the claims. Take a look. Calling up the Guard, and then it became the chain of command went to Nancy Pelosi and to the mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser. Did you, as required by law, authorize that?
100%, and attested to by many people, and they turned it down. Nancy Pelosi turned it down.
Mayor Bowser's written refusal, the communications between the leader of the Capitol Police and their chain of command to the DOD refusing our request to allow National Guardsmen and women to stage on January 4 and 5 before January 6.
Did you both ask for the National Guard to be called up?
Without a doubt, Sean, we've made that very clear, not just once, but on numerous occasions. We wanted to make sure that there was plenty of National Guard on the ready in case there was some kind of violence.
I can only speak about the 6th of January and the events leading up to it, and I can say definitively President Trump offered any and all support requested by suitable officials within Washington, D.C., federal, state, well, no, not state, but federal and local.
Wow. Now, the president wanted the Capitol protected. The January 6th committee, well, they weren't telling the whole truth. They didn't want that part of the story getting out. Why didn't they bring in the Capitol Police chief? It was never a serious committee conducting a real investigation. The worst part is they haven't come up with a plan to prevent this from ever happening again. This was a political witch hunt. This was a smear campaign, a vessel for Liz Cheney's petty revenge. Now, tonight, we're just 227 days away from the election, and while Trump's opponents are banking on a variety of political witch hunts to put them over the top, Biden, he's just struggling away in the polls. New CNN survey has Biden down by a whopping 8 points in Michigan, well beyond the margin of error. The same poll shows Donald Trump up by 2 in a very important state of Pennsylvania. But today, Biden's sidekick, Kamala Harris, she was campaigning in Puerto Rico, a U.S. territory without any electoral votes. Earlier in the week, she compared the Biden administration to a CVS receipt. Huh? Watch.
We have achieved a lot. Carol was so wonderful in her introduction to list what could be, you know, my husband Doug says it's like a CVS receipt. You know, we could just go on and on with what we've got on the list. But I will say what everyone here knows. I do believe strongly that this is a very decisive decade that we're in. And the moment is now.
So according to Democrats, your life is so much better under Biden, you just don't realize it. You're not smart enough to figure it out. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.